Welcome back. Now, the president of the African Development Bank and the former Nigerian Minister of Agriculture, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, would always say no region of the world has ever moved to industrialized economy status without a transformation of the agricultural sector. Agriculture, which contributes 16.2% of the GDP of Africa and gives some form of employment to over 60% of the population, holds the key to accelerated growth, diversification, and job creation for African economies. Here in Nigeria, efforts are being made to develop the agricultural sector, but how best can the country leverage on the dynamics of agriculture and agro-allied industry to drive the nation's economy? Let's talk to the chairman, Agric and Agro-Allied Group of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Tunji Falade. Mr. Tunji Falade is also the CEO, Kingsway Quality Foods Limited. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. Right, so how would you describe the state of the agricultural sector in Nigeria?
Well, I will start by saying that it's indeed a good development that the government has enunciated some policies to enhance productivity in the agri space. And most importantly, the fact that the government itself has made up its mind to diversify the economy, it's a welcome development. However, there's a whole lot that needs to be done in the sector. Like I said earlier, there are some policies that have been enunciated which has impacted the sector and the economy. For instance, if you look at the policy of the CBN Anchor Brass program, for instance, if you look at the agricultural promotion policy of the government, you see that the objective is to ensure that productivity in agriculture is enhanced. Now, let's talk specifically now. Talking about agricultural promotion policy, what is meant to address is the supply and the demand gap. For instance, the rice demand locally in Nigeria is about 6.5 million metric tons, whereas the production capacity locally is 1.5. So there's a deficit of 5 million. So government is looking at how they can empower farmers, empower agro-processors to ensure that this gap is bridged. Actually, that policy is essentially an improvement on the ATA, that is the Agricultural Transformation Agenda of the previous administration, which essentially looks at agriculture about how to make it more efficient and more effective, but they are now being specific. However, I want to say that the impact is there, but there's a lot that needs to be done.
Now, okay, from what you've said and from what we have seen, the government, of course, appears to be doing quite a lot, you know, in the agricultural sector now. But do you see the sector leveraging on some of these things you've mentioned that the government has actually come up with?
Yes, definitely. The sector is leveraging on it, but the emphasis again is on implementation of these policies and how to ensure that they cascade down to everybody and the impact is quite profound. For instance, as I speak to you, I know a lot of agric extension workers who tell me that farmers complain that these incentives are not getting to them, to the extent that they are not encouraging them to come to their farms again. They're asking them not even to come again. But at the same time, I know too well that the Anchor Brass program has been extended to hundreds of thousands of farmers. But in a population of close to 200 million, you are looking at a situation whereby it cascades down to everybody. For instance, if you look at China, for instance, China was able to move 800 million people out of poverty because they went through the regions and cascades down to the counties. Now, we have 774 local government. They have to be actively involved in these things to really reach out so that there won't be complaints. I know of agro-processors who complain that they don't get these incentives. At the same time, the government had actually put some incentives on the table. The government has to be commended for that. But the truth of the matter is the implementation. For instance, if you look at the operation for NASAR, NASAR is a Nigerian incentive-based risk-sharing system for agricultural lending. The way they operate is good. They interfaced with their project monitoring officers who work in different states. But I want to see a situation whereby they work closely with the local government whether the local government, they can get the farmers there, they get them involved in all of these things so that it can cascade down to everybody so that there won't be complaints any longer.
Let's talk about agricultural value chain. How developed is this chain?
Well, let me start by saying that that area is a neglected area in Nigeria and needs to be really addressed. We have the big corporations. We have the big, for instance, Okomu has done very well. Their price chart index is 72 naira. If you look at Presco, they have done so well too. But what about the SMEs? What about thousands of SMEs scattered all over? For instance, why I'm saying that there's a lot that needs to be done, even though the government is doing something, is that Nigeria has very impressive profile when it comes to agriculture. For instance, I can tell you Nigeria, on the world ranking, Nigeria is #1 in cassava with 15 metric tons production every year, in yam, in sorghum, in so many, in kola nut, even in cashew, we're #2 in the world. But the truth of the matter is, where are the value chains? Where are the value chains of tomato? By the time you mention 1, 2, 3, 4, you're lost in account in a population of 180 million. You're looking at a situation whereby these policies must be implemented in such a way that, you and I can meet somebody and it will tell you, look, I've assessed this. Not that you just read them in the newspapers and you are not finding people who are tangibly, engaging this incentive. So on the sum total, we're progressing, no doubt about that. The policies are there. For instance, if you look at BOI, they've done well. They've come up with a lot of incentives for cassava. They have the cap for agro-processing. Nexim has its own 500 billion. But the question is how many people are accessing it anyway. You have BOA. The BOA more or less championed the Anchor Bora scheme, for instance. If the BOA did not key into it, it would probably not be a success. So they've done a lot along that. And the Anchor Boras program is an anchor that takes everybody through the value chain. And essentially, but there's a whole lot that needs to be done, a lot more implementation of strategies and policies.
Now, collaboration, issue of collaboration and partnership, of course, generally understood as people working together, yes, to achieve higher productivity. How can this be achieved or implemented in the agri sector?
Okay, if you look at the agri sector, it's one big commercial ecosystem. You have different compartments. You have the